Welcome to the audio podcast ministry of The Bridge. In all that we do, our priority is to lead all people from all places to be all in with Jesus. We hope that by providing this message in this way, it will be an encouragement to those of you who have already decided to follow Jesus, as well as a way home for those of you who have not yet said yes to Him. You can find out more, as well as support this ministry, by going to bridgeclarksville.com.
So yesterday in your message, you tell the story of how when you were a kid, you were watching Rocky, the first one.
Right.
And he's fighting Apollo Creed, and just this brutal beating he's taken throughout. And that you assume, as just a normal human being, that Rocky at the end is going to lay the blow against Apollo Creed and win. But he doesn't. It's split decision, win goes to Apollo, and you're kind of left with this, what's going on? Now in the grand scheme of the series of movies, it's an amazing story, an amazing point. But I was thinking about that and how the majority of really great stories out there have a moment similar to where it seems like the hero, or however that's represented, is down for the count. And where they took an L, if you will, but then they do have this comeback in some way. Mm-hmm. And they prove themselves as stronger, more powerful, the ultimate winner, whatever that looks like. So we're just talking about some movies where we've seen that. Some of our favorite scenes. You had mentioned
The Princess Bride is one where Wesley's in that pain machine, and then that jealous prince or king, whatever, comes and cranks it up, and you think he's dead, and then Andre the Giant's just carrying him around the rest of the movie because he's so limp or whatever. But they end up saving, the princess, and then they happily ever after or whatever. But yeah, for a moment, you think, this dude's dead. He just cranked it up to 100. It's over.
Well, and then at the end, he ends up fighting the king, whoever it is. Yeah. Okay. It's weird that you'd bring that one up.
Well, childhood favorite right there. That's what
it's good. I was actually thinking from the second Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers. It's one of my favorite scenes in any movie, but there's the battle at Helm's Deep going on, and you've got all the armies of men and the elves and all they're at Helm's Deep, and they're up on the wall, and the orc army's there. And over the night, it's dark, it's raining. They breach the outer wall. They get into the inner court and into the inner keep. But there's something that's said earlier in the movie by Gandalf that says when you're in this situation at dawn of the fifth day or something like that, look to the east. And so it's getting ready to be dawn, and they're just overwhelmed. You think, there's no way they're going to come out of this. But the sun crests over the hill, and there's Gandalf standing there. He looks like he's all by himself, and the sun is right behind him. And then you see this massive army come over the hill. And then they just wipe out the orc army. And that's one of my favorite scenes where you do think all's lost, but then here comes the hero. Here comes the saving into that. Did you have any you wanted to share?
I mean, Rocky's mine. So I've got Rocky and Princess Bride and Lord of the Rings. So
that's a good trifecta right there.
I think we've hit a wide audience there. Yeah,
we've covered all the generations.
And we tried to work in something about Toy Story. So but we couldn't really figure out the details on that one. Yeah. But that's story, and that's what makes story great. And I think if you look throughout Scripture, even throughout the Old Testament, you have these moments where it seems like all's lost. I was thinking of when Moses was holding his arms up during the battle, and they get tired and think, oh no, and then here come Joshua and Aaron to hold those up until the battle's over. And it seems like there's several things like that in God's story. But we look at the grand narrative, and we come to this moment at the cross between Jesus and the enemy. And you mentioned it on Sunday that it seems like the hero took the L. Mm-hmm. But we know the story. We know where it's going. But you brought up this great point that I think is good for us to ponder, that it's through death that God brings life and resurrection. And we see that in Christ. He had to die in order to be resurrected and in order for our death to be defeated as well. But then as we try to walk this out each day, there's a thought of, well, what is it that we're holding on to that we think this is the story? This is what I want to have happen. This is the best outcome. But nothing seems to be progressing. It may be even regressing. And the challenge was there may be some things in our life, these pictures that we have of how things should be in our lives, that we may just need to lay down and let die. Because death precedes life. That was the point you made. And I thought I've got some of those examples in my life where that has happened. Do you guys have any where you've had something going on, you're holding on to this picture, and you realize you needed to lay it down because God had something much better to bring out of that?
For me, very, very recently, I've actually just laid something down. Me and Allie both have together, and just obviously we just had Sam, and we're, all those hospital bills are coming, and we got Allie's car payment and all this stuff. And at the beginning of the year, we had looked at each other and we said, what's our goal together as a family for the year? And we were like, let's be debt-free by the end of this year. And we were like, this is how we're going to do it. We did the whole Dave Ramsey snowball debt, scenario thing.
You got envelopes all around your house?
Yeah, we got envelopes everywhere with all random numbers. But we went and had Sam, and all those bills start coming in. Then you're paying for all these other things, and I just looked at her and I'm like, because we want to have the house, we want to have this, we want to be able not to pay rent, that sort of thing, and it's just we realized very recently together that that was something we were holding on to, the idea of we can be financially free by the end of this year and we're gonna make it happen, versus realizing in this moment that may not be what we're going to be doing, and that's okay because we have Sam, we have each other. It's not like we're in some crazy wild low place, and so for me that was a big deal, being like, God, you know what, these finances, everything that I have in my bank account or may not have in my bank account, that's yours. And the story that I would say God gave it to me in a moment because I was praying about it, just asking him to, give me some sort of peace about this decision. And he reminded me about in Exodus when he was daily giving everybody the manna they needed for that day. They would go to sleep and have nothing the next morning, right? But that every single day they had exactly what they needed. And I feel like God brought that story to my mind because he's like, it does not matter, looking forward. Right now you have everything you need. You have a wife who loves you. You have a son who you get to pour into every single day. You have a roof over your head. You get to go work with amazing people and not even really work. Ministry for me, not really work personally, but that's another thing, right?
You probably shouldn't put that out.
Yeah. It's just because I love it so much. It's a passion. It's not work. But yeah, it was. I think he brought that story to my mind to give me that peace, right? But we very recently have gone through that for sure, laying that down and just saying, God, this is yours. Do with it what you got to do with it.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I've got one that is fairly recent in my life where I had been out of ministry before coming here to the Bridge for about 3 years, and or at least vocational ministry. And there were just some things, some physical illness, some other things going on in life where I just couldn't work. And there's some counseling I was going through real early on in that, maybe a month or two into being out. And it was a pastor I was meeting with, and we were talking through it, and he said, Josh, do you think you'll ever be content if God doesn't lead you back into some sort of pastoral ministry? And I thought for a second, and I said, no, not at all. I said, that's my calling. I wouldn't be content. And I thought that was the right answer. And he said, I need to tell you, you'll never be ready to enter back into ministry until you're content being God's son, your wife's husband, and your kid's dad. Until you're content with those three things, you're not going to be ready in your heart for that. And on the outside, my response was, oh yeah, that makes sense. Inside, I thought, you're an idiot. I don't know. But he was absolutely correct. And it took a while. It took about 2 years to get to that point where I did feel that contentment. But what that required was for me to lay that down, because you were using the word picture, and that just clicked with me yesterday that I had this picture of life. And I didn't I didn't think I deserved to ever be back in ministry. I knew that, but I was holding on to this thought that, but I will be, and this is what I'd like for it to look like, and it needs to go, those kinds of things. And once I was like, there was this laying down moment. God, I'll walk this path, whatever it looks like, and I'll let you bring it, your timing, your way. And it took about 2.5 years until we had a conversation. And the way God brought that about, it didn't happen until I was really honestly able to say, I'm okay if I never go back. Mm-hmm. And I'm in it. Okay if I never go back. And I even at that moment, I thought, I may not. It may never look the same. But I know I did dream about what it might look like. And being in a position, like you were saying, working with people you love, in a job you love, in a place you love. Being here at the Bridge, checked all of those things. And so God not only resurrected something there, but he did it in a way I never thought I would be allowed to be back in it. Mm-hmm. I thought, well, I'll go into some terrible situation because it's my penance, But, in a spot where he has truly brought he showed such great mercy in restoring that in my life.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah. I've got, like you both, I guess, different moments along the way, but I think to not just say the same thing, insert different name. I think it's one thing and an important thing to allow that picture to go away, to even admit maybe it was something that I dreamed up along the way or something I wanted. But then I think that next step is to also make sure, along with letting the picture die, that I let the disappointment and the regret of it die as well. It's one thing for me to say, well, I'm going to move on and do something different and let that go. But then in the back of my mind, I've got this frustration, anger, self-loathing, or something that is always there just because it's not exactly what it's supposed to be. And with words, I can say, well, that's fine. At least God's this, or at least I'm that, or I can talk it away. But truly being able to say, I'm actually happy that it turned out this way and not my way, I think is that next step for me, because I think for me at least, it's a progression of going, okay, God, if what I pictured never happens, I'm okay with that. And not that God needs my permission, but I give you permission, God, to dream up something different for me or reveal to me what it is you've already dreamed. And then the next step for me is to now not live with this constant looking over my shoulder, reminding myself of what could have been, and just to let that go, because we talk about being all in, or at least I do around here. And that's not just all in with Jesus in the future, it's with now. And I am never going to be everything that I can be, and everything as I need to be as a husband, as a father, as a pastor, leader, friend, if there's a part of me that's still living with disappointment and regret over my picture had to die. And I'm just constantly going back to the cemetery, if you will, and going, man, that was a great picture, but that's okay. By God's grace, I'll move on. It's one thing to say that in preacher terms. It's another thing to actually wake up and go, this is a good thing. I'm in a good spot. And so to me, it's the progression of it all. It begins with where you were at, saying, okay, God, I'm okay. If this is where it is, I accept that. It's another thing to go, wow, I'm actually glad that I'm here and not even where I thought I was going to be. So I think it's a little bit of a progression there, and but it starts with that decision, which is what both of you have alluded to.
Well, and I think you bring up a really great point that you hear my story and you think, oh, well, you lay down something and it ended up being so much greater in your mind, right? And it is, and the eternal mind, I would say, yeah, well, whatever God brings is greater. But as you're walking through that in each day, it may not feel that way, right? If you can look back, you say, that was right. But so there's probably some people that are maybe doing that or have done that, and they've had this picture, they've laid it down, they thought this would happen, that would happen, that would happen.
That's why Jesus says we have to die daily. I mean, it's not a decision that you made and then you're good. I mean, every single day, because the enemy's just going to hold over that picture of, yeah, you were pretty bold and confident and noble when you did that, but come on now. Don't you really wish this had worked out, And so I think it's that daily going, nope, I'm dying again to that picture, even though you would hope once would be enough, but it's a daily thing.
Well, and even what God might be resurrecting, bringing to life, could be really difficult. I mean, it could be a hard path that you walk through, and it's that mindset of knowing, okay, it sure doesn't feel as good as I thought it would, or come as easy as I thought it would, but I trust. I trust that God's at work, and it is good, and it is better. Because we had also discussed the idea of, okay, well, what are some things we need to remember? If you've laid that down and it hasn't like God didn't immediately make life 1,000 times better for you, what are the truths then that we remember if we're struggling through that? One is, it's a daily laying down. We do this over and over and over, surrendering that. What are some other things that just good truths from Scripture to remember?
Well, yesterday we brought it up a little bit in the message, but I think just understanding that God always does what He says He's going to do, and even though it doesn't, the timing is a little bit different. I mean, you've got Easter week, and you've got it happened Friday, then you have that silent Saturday, which certainly would have been the longest 24 hours of any follower of Jesus' life, because you thought it was going to work out, it didn't work out. And even though Jesus told you it was going to work out that way, there still seemed to be a shock when Jesus showed up and said, I'm here. And the disciples said, how? Well, I told you multiple times that I was going to die, and 3 days later I was going to rise again. But there's just this inability to process that, I guess, thought in the moment. And for thousands of years, God had said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to send someone. He's going to suffer. He's going to be killed. He's going to be raised up. I mean, all of it was lined out. And now we can look back and go, oh, this is so obvious. How were they so idiotic that they couldn't process all that? But it's just like you and me. I mean, we can hear truth, but when you're living it, it's a lot more difficult. And so I think going back and reminding myself of all the times where I felt like God wasn't coming through, and then He eventually showed up and resurrected something or brought something new, brought to life, brought to mind. Just holding on to the fact that He is the only one that's never let me down. And I've let myself down, other people have let me down, but God's never, ever, ever let me down. And He's, not that He needed to, but He has earned my trust, And so I guess that's the first truth I go to.
I'm reminded of during the Sermon on the Mount when He was talking about don't be anxious about anything, and then He references the birds. He goes, they go home every day. They like I feed them, or my Father feeds them every day. The lilies of the field, like they are clothed just to be killed and thrown into the fire the next day. And He's like, but them and all their beauty it's more beautiful than Solomon, right? And everything he had and all his wealth and wisdom, right? Just that reminder too of just like, even though it may seem daunting, it's not what I wanted, and it sucks sometimes to be like, this is what I thought it was supposed to be. God, I thought you told me this is what I've been doing good things. I've been, getting into prosperity gospel almost a little bit. But to be able to say, this isn't what I want. This isn't how I envisioned it, but I'm not going to be anxious about it, and I'm not going to have this kind of like fear and anger in me. Because if He's going to take care of the birds, and I mean the plants, like, and I'm those are animals and wildlife and all this sort of stuff. I am a child of God. I have a soul that has been placed in me. I was known before I was even in my mother's womb, right? Like, how much more is He just going to take care of me, even though it may not be what I wanted? That's what I'm reminded of whenever in those moments of, okay, it's not what I want, so what is it?
Yeah. There's a verse that right around the time I had that conversation with the pastor that I came across, and it's Isaiah 41:10 says, do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. And there was another verse, it's somewhere in that area, that talks about being led by your right hand as well. And I just had this picture in my mind kind of a father and a child, where the father's leading the way and has his hand behind, and the kids behind holding the hand. And that's kind of the picture that was in my mind during a lot of that. Of, okay, well, God has promised to guide his children to good, and we see that repeated. You mentioned the passage in Romans yesterday, that all things work out for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. So I think a great word of encouragement at this point. One, remember the resurrection. We have the spoiler alert. Jesus, he didn't take the L, right? It was a setup for the win. But those things we're called to lay down for God's children. When we do that, we know his promises are true. He always works good. He's always with us. He knows best how to meet our needs. And he guides us where he wants us to be for his glory and for our good. If we can remember those things, and then every day, let's lay this back down, let's lay it back down. I'm excited to see what God would do in each of our lives, but definitely in our church as we do that as a family, as a body. So we're coming up to Easter this next Sunday. You think you're going to preach on the resurrection?
I think it would be very appropriate.
Okay.
I think we might have a riot on our hands if we decide to go elsewhere. So yeah, we're going to be celebrating together, and I'm excited. It's always a fun Sunday, and it's it sounds very unspiritual, but the energy in the room is always a lot of fun. It's not about energy; it's about worship, but there is some joy and some anticipation and excitement that's there, and it's unlike any other time we're together. So I'm very excited about that. Yeah.
Same, and we hope you'll join us this Sunday after listening to this for the first time. Services at 9 and
10:30.
10:30. I was thinking, wait, I got those backwards. 9 and 10:30. We hope that you will join with us at the Bridge. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you for joining us today. If you live in the area, we hope you will soon join us in person. If you were unable to do that, we hope you will continue to stay connected with us by following this podcast and sharing it with your friends. For more information, go to bridgeclarksville.com.